since the inception of Title IX legislation back in the 1970s, women's athletics on the Bluff has come a long way. The first fully scholarshiped women's student athletes arrived at the University of Portland in 1977, and throughout the many obstacles and challenges that they overcame, they were able to pave the way for today's generation of student athletes at UP and throughout the country.
Title IX was passed in 1972, and it's a federal law addressing discrimination in education. And it wasn't passed with sports in mind. It was really addressing admissions, scholarship, faculty pay, hiring, and it wasn't until probably the 2 or 3 years after it got passed that people really understood the impact it was going to have on college sports and high school sports for women.
Graduated from St. Mary's Academy in 1977 and started in the fall of '77 at University of Portland. Right at the onset of Title IX, it was just coming into legislation. One of the first 3 incoming freshmen to receive athletic scholarships.
As women's sports came on the scene, that was a time that athletic departments had much fewer resources than they do now. So you were adding and almost doubling your programs, which was a great thing for opportunities in women's athletics and in college athletics. But you were doing it without the resources to support the sport you already had.
I think that was a real concern even nationally. Everybody kind of had to walk before they ran, and here was the same situation at the University of Portland. We didn't have a great deal of money altogether in athletics. We did the same thing I think most schools did. We started small and kept building.
That meant new coaches, it meant scholarships, it meant travel budgets, and so a lot of institutions were facing issues with how do you fully implement those, in addition to a lot of legal uncertainty.
We never ever talked about what we were being shorted or how hard it was to finish a volleyball tournament on a Saturday night and then drive all the way back from Idaho or Canada or Northern California all night to get back so they wouldn't have to pay another night's lodging, I'm sure, with the budget they were working with. But we never complained, and we never groused, never. That never came out of anyone's mouth. We never knew any different.
It did result in the upgrade of teams from club-like programs, very informal, self-coached, to programs where the students had coaches, had athletic scholarship participation, had the ability to travel. It was not a quick process, but it was a really important step in making that kind of progress for women's sports.
2 practice shirts, that's all you were given. 2 shirts, 2 pair of shorts, and you took care of this on your own as far as laundry. I was down in that laundry room quite a bit down in the basement of Mailing Hall, keeping these things clean.
Back in the early days of Title IX, when it was first passed, college athletics looked a lot different for women. They had one uniform. They were doing their own laundry. It was a uniform that was passed down as opposed to new uniforms every year. They're doing bake sales to have their travel budgets. Their coaches are part-time, maybe they're unpaid.
We just kind of did our own thing. And our coach was not a teacher here. He lived off campus, and so we were basically on our own, just showed up for practices and games.
To look at that model versus the model that our student athletes have today, where they have a full complement of scholarships, they have highly trained coaches who have incredible expertise in their sports.
To start here in 1993, wearing all hats as a part-time coach, and now just the support itself. And we've got the academic support, the mental health support, training room support, the fitness support. I mean, it's just like, wow, it's just exploded. And it provides the opportunity for men and women athletes to be the best that they can be.
It was the Letterman jacket back then. Maybe I didn't wear it then, but I look at it now and it is kind of special to have that. And it was a very, very important time in my life.
This is my UP watch right in the middle. It says UP, it is purple, it's beautiful. It's a wind up. This was before battery operated watches. And you earned this after 4 years of playing a sport here at UP.
It took, I think, a long time, about 20 years, for really the impact of Title IX to show in college athletics. I think that's pretty similar to the timeline we saw here at UP.
Over the years, the University of Portland has been able to set itself apart in women's athletics, winning multiple national championships and many West Coast Conference titles. Though Title IX was passed in 1972, it didn't affect athletics until 1977. 40 years later, so much has changed for women's athletes, and current student athletes here at UP and throughout the country have many advantages thanks to the trailblazers that were here before them.
With the history of Title IX, and particularly here at UP, we've had some wonderful women's programs over the years. And particularly right now, one of our pillars with all of our sports programs is providing a premier experience for all of our students. And that's something that's at the forefront for us when we look at our men's and our women's programs.
These early pioneer women figuring out, it's really important to them, and they found a way to make it happen. And without kind of that momentum starting, there's no way we would be where we are now in 2017.
I think that the UP athletes today and the young girls who are in athletics are so lucky. They are so lucky to be able to have that freedom, to be able to play any sport that they can now, because when I was little, we were told no.
To have the facilities and training, traveling, some of those advantages are something we didn't have, and I hope they appreciate that. I think we were in the remedial days of that, in the pioneer days, so to speak, the trailblazers in that regard. So I hope they realize that that has come and evolved over a number of years, and I hope they appreciate that.
It's amazing to think of how much change has happened since Title IX was passed in 1972. And one of the great things about this current generation of student athletes that we have here at UP is that they were born and came of age at a time when women's athletics was really prominent. And so it wasn't something that they had to fight for, that they had to struggle for. It's just a part of who they are. It's a part of what our society provides for them. It's an opportunity that everyone has.
Looking at a team in 2017 that is fully funded, with their tuition is all paid for, they're walking out of college debt-free. Everything they have to compete as a student athlete is provided for them. Having a historical perspective makes you appreciate certainly more what you have now than what they did when I was in college, or certainly, when the calendar page turned and Title IX became effective.
The credit goes to Joe Etzel and Larry Williams on this. Is we were out in front of women's sports early in our conference, and women's soccer, and Clive Charles and Garrett Smith were obviously a really big part of that. I feel like we had a head start. I feel like what happened in women's soccer with what was built by Clive has really helped us craft some of those other programs as well.
Clive Charles has a lot to take credit for on that. I mean, he came to me and said, I think we could make a big impact nationally if we get in to soccer at a higher level before the football playing schools start to do it. And so the soccer program, I think, raised the other women's athletic programs. If they can do it, we can do it. And so I think that we can be very proud of where we are today.
Some of the real visible progress of that has been the success of women's soccer, where that's a program that we fully fund, that we support in all sorts of ways, and we've seen the payoff in that in the performance on the field. Same thing with volleyball. It's a highly supported sport, and we've seen the payoff in that in the team's performance this year.
Joe Etzel and the Buzz Strouds, and even today with Scott Lakem, I think we're all pretty fortunate to have men that are really supportive of, regardless of what your gender is, supportive of your success. Those men also helped the momentum moving forward for us.
One of the other things that we've seen in terms of campus impact and athletic department impact is the addition of our rowing program, where that program's in its 5th year. We have 50 or 60 women student athletes competing in that every year, and that's been a really wonderful addition to our athletic department and also to our campus.
Today, I am a Senior Vice President Credit Administrator for Umpqua Bank. It's the largest regional bank in the Pacific Northwest, having been at the University of Portland when things were certainly not handed to you, where you had to really work and find your way in the athletics. And then the academic program. It was a very strong business school, and it prepared me very well for that transition.
When I graduated from UP, my fate was to become a teacher. I was a 32-year teacher at San Barlow High School in Gresham. While I was teaching in 1993, I found out that you could become a police officer and still keep your day job. So I applied for the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, and I went through a 9-month academy, and I became a reserve deputy for Multnomah County.
Looking at the student athletes that I've had over the last 5 or 6 years, Jasmine Mouton is going to grad school and coaching in Ireland, and Sarah Griffin and Allison Sievers are coaches at Sunset High School here in town, and there's several more, but it gives women an opportunity in the athletic world.
We had all these women who were willing to sort of struggle through these early years of Title IX and still participate and compete even though the resources they had weren't the same as some of the men's programs, and they were willing to fight for more. So they were willing to push and say, we want this equality, we want better coaches, we want paid coaches, we want uniforms, we want to be able to play and practice at the same times as the men's teams. And so, those are the women who paved the way for so much of the success that we see now because of the struggle and the fight that they were willing to make.
To come to the University of Portland now, Division I, great conference, great schools, and certainly today the University of Portland would be an amazing step for a high school player. It absolutely would. My advice to players today, what I would offer to them is, you're here because you've earned that right. Try to relax and enjoy the ride.